So meanwhile, for the whole session, please be mute yourself. If you have any doubt or any questions, you can ask at the end of the session and Nikhil will answer of all your questions. So Nikhil, over to you. We can start the session.
Yeah, thanks, Akash. Just confirm me whether my voice is clear and audible.
Yes, yes, it's perfect.
Yeah. So hello everyone. Welcome to second session of our Enrich Your JavaScript Skills. And let's go and see what we are learning today. This is today's agenda in which we are going through arrays. Then we'll see array methods. After that, we'll move on to spread and rest operator. Then we'll see different types of loops in JavaScript. Then we'll try to understand what is this keyword in JavaScript. After that, we'll dig into the arrow function. And then we'll go to one of the most complicated uh, topic in JavaScript history, I would say, like prototypes, object prototypes and prototype chains, and how object inheritance work. And in the end, we'll see class keywords and how class inheritance work in JavaScript. So we'll start with the first topic, that is arrays. And by the way, this session brings the 15 to like 10 to 15 questions in your certification exam. So I just picked up the selected topic from the certification point of view. So I hope these topics will help you in the exam. So we'll go to the first topic, that is arrays. An array is the common thing in all the programming language. So array is a special type of variable which can store multiple values using special syntax. Every value is associated with numeric index starting with 0. So in array, the index starts with 0. And JavaScript array can store multiple element of different data types. So this is the point you should make a note. In JavaScript, array can have different types of data type. So a single array can have number as well as string as well as boolean, anything. So it should not be of same data type. It can be of different data type in JavaScript. And array in JavaScript can define and initialize in two-way, array literal and array constructor. So let's go to our playground, I would say. Open a new tab. I'll right click and select inspect. I select the console. Similar to the previous session, I'll write my code in the console only. So to create an array, there are two syntax. First is array. And for creating an array using array literal, you already know the array should have these two brackets. And when we create an array with these two brackets, we call that notation is an array literal notation. So we'll create a couple of array to get a better understanding. So I create an array here, string array that contains all string element in it. Then I can create a number array that has all number in it. I can create a decimal array that can contain all decimal. This all possibilities I'm talking about right now. Then there can be an array that contains all Boolean values. And as I said, we can create an array which can have different data types in it. So here is a mixed array that has number as well as string, and I can add Boolean as well in it. So this is possible in JavaScript. So if I print, you can see all values are present in that array. So this is the one way of creating an array, that is array literal, and one of the recommended way as well as the most common and popular way. Now let's go to the second way, that is array constructor. So array constructor is the second way of creating an array. To create an array using array constructor, we'll use a new keyword with an array acaps function. So when we call this method, it generates a new array. And if it generates a new array, you should have one variable to create this array, to hold this array. So I'm creating a new array using an array constructor, and I'm assigning that array value to a variable string array. So now if I print string array, you can see it's an empty array. And as we discussed this, we can assign the value using the index value, and index is always be a numeric number and it always start with 0. So if I want to add some value to this array, I can simply write thing, I'll call my array, I'll use this bracket notation and I'll say at 0th index of that array, add the element 1. So if I do this and print my string array again, you will see I'm assigning the element 1 to the 0th index of string array. So this is the one way to assign a value when you create an array using array constructor. There is another way using array constructor by which we can create an empty array based on the number. So here is a variable numeric array, and in which I am creating an array using array constructor by passing the length. So this length tells to this array, you should create an empty array with 3 empty values. So we are initializing the array here with the 3 empty values. So I'll show you what it means. If I now print numeric array, so you'll see empty times 3. So it has something, but those are empty. So the memory is already allocated. And if I say the length, there is a length property to an array that tells how many elements are available in the array. So it gives me 3. It means 3 blocks are filled in this array. There is another way to create this, and the last way to create this is you can initialize at the time of creation. Like this, I can say create a new array using an array constructor and initialize the array with the properties or elements called 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I hit enter, it generates the same mixed array with the values that we are passing to this constructor. So these are the 2 ways by which we can create the array. So array constructor, and the first one is array literal. Both are easy one, and the preferable one is the array literal. So now let's move on to the array methods, and there are many array methods, and I want to discuss briefly about each of them, because in exam either you will get the question based on the syntax or based on the functionalities. So we'll go quickly through all of them. Okay, so the first array method is push. Push is very common method in all programming language that adds.
Nikhil, can you just put the slide in the presentation mode?
Okay. Now better?
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So the push is the method that adds one or more element at the end of the array and returns the new length of the array. There is a second method that is called pop. It removes the last element from an array and returns that element that is removed. So push and pop is like both the methods are working at the end of the array. One is for adding a value to the end of the array, and one pop is working to remove that value from the end of the array. Similarly, if we want to add and remove an element from the front of the array, we'll use shift and unshift. Shift remove the first element from the array and return that element, and unshift add the element to the front of the array and return a new array length. Then there is a reverse method. So reverse, just as the name suggests, reverse the order of the elements in an array. And then after that, we have a splice method. Till now, we have seen adding and removing from the end, adding and removing from the front. Now, there is a method splice that add and remove element from an array at a specific index, whichever index we want. So let's go to the playground and try to see all the first 6 one. So I'll go back to my playground and we'll create quickly an array. These are basic, so I'll go at little bit pace. So I created an array and I said the push method just push the element at the end of the array. So if I push E and print X, so it push the element and you can see that element is available in the X array. Similarly, if I use the pop operation on that array, it removes the element from the last. That means the E will go off and it shows the element that has been removed. And if I print the array again, So you will see now we don't have the E element in our array. So this is the example of push pop, and then we quickly see example of shift and unshift. I'll create the array again, and I'll say I want to remove the first element from an array. I'll say array dot shift, and shift always remove the first element from an array. If I hit enter and press X again, you can see now our array doesn't have the A element in it. Similarly, if I want to put it back, I can do unshift. The element that I want to add, I can pass it here. And if I hit enter, now it returns the new length of the array, that is 4. And if I press X, you can see the A is added at the front of the array. So we have seen push pop and shift unshift. Let's go and see the reverse method. So now again, I have my array X. And if I want to reverse the order of the elements in an array, I have a method called reverse. And reverse will just reverse the order. And if I print X, it will have the reverse order. Then let's move on to the last one, that is splice. So I'll initialize my array, and this is a little bit tricky but not complicated, but let's see. So I'm applying a splice, so just make sure that spelling is splice, not slice. There is another method that's gonna come, that is slice. So here it's P is there, so it's splice. So splice takes many parameters. The first parameter is the index from where you want to start your splicing, and the second parameter is the length or the delete count, that how many elements you want to delete. So if I say from index 1, I want to delete one element, and I hit enter. So it removed the element from the index 1, and the count of the element that we want to remove is 1. So it removed only one element. So how it works, it will go to array, it find the index 0, index 1, and it say, see the second parameter, how many numbers are there. If it's 1, it remove this. If it was 2, it would have removed the C as well. This is how, based on the index, we can remove the value in an array. But similarly, if we want to add something, so then splice is handy there as well. If you pass the second parameter as 0, then splice understand I don't have anything to delete. And after that, if you add something, it will take it as a add, that element that you want to add to an array. So what it's gonna do is, it will again go back to the index. It will say the index 0, index 1, and he say no element, 0 element I have to delete, and then it checks the third argument and it see, okay, hooray is there, I want to add it at the first index. So if I hit enter and press my X again, you can see at a particular index, I have added that value. So splice is used for adding as well as for removing based on the syntax that you are using. And let's go back to our slide again. So here you would have observed that I have mentioned these methods, especially in the red color. And the reason behind this is these all are mutating our actual array. So it means if I'm putting a push, it actually updating the real array and mutating the real data. And once we learn more about the spread and rest operator, I'll tell you the drawback of these methods. Okay. So I never use push pop in any of the project till now, but there are somewhere maybe helpful. Let's go to the index of property, last index of property. So index of property is most commonly used to filter the data in the list. So this property returns the index of the first occurrence of the specified element in an array. So if you want to filter out something within the array, you can use index of, it returns the first occurrence index. Similarly, the last index of is there, that returns the last occurrence of the specified element in an array. We'll see in a while this as well in the demo. Then there is a join method that returns string in all the elements. separated by the specified separator. So you can convert the array into the string, and you can append a separator in between those strings. That also possible with the join method. Then there is a slice. That's, as I mentioned earlier, this question will be in the exam based on like which method is mutating the actual data, and what is the syntax and what is the difference between splice and slice. So always remember, slice returns a new array with a specified start to end element. And then we have a concat method. And when you have two arrays and you want to concatenate those array, you can use the concat operation. So let's go to our playground again and let's see the examples of each of them. So I'll go back to my array X, and I want to find the index of element C. So there is X dot index of O is capital, just make sure. And then I'll say find C in an array. Whether that C is available or not, index of property return an index. So valid index is 0 and above. So it sends us the index 2. It means it present at the index 2, and it's correct because 0, 1, and 2. Our index of array start with 0, just make sure. And if I say some random alphabet that is G, and if it returns -1, it means it's not present in the array. Similarly, if I create another array that has duplicate values, D I repeated here, and rest all are unique. And now if I want to find the last index of, it means the last occurrence of that element. So if I say X dot index of D, so the last index of, so index of always returns me the first occurrence, that is at 0th index. But if I say last index of D, it returns me the last occurrence. So first it found it here, it store the 0th index, and it starts searching down, and he founds again, and it's updated the last stored index with the 4. So now the last occurrence is at the index 4. So this is for last index of. Let's move on to slice. In our array, we already have elements. Now we said the join method is there that returns string of all the elements separated by a specific separator. So if I say I don't have any specific separator, I'll just give the empty quotes. It just joins the array elements into a string. And if I want to join all the elements in an array with a specific symbol or a separator, we called it, I want those to be separated by the hyphen and join it. So if I enter, you can see it join all the element, but adding the separator in between each the element. So this is a join method. Then we have a slice method, and slice method always returns a new array. Just note it down because this will be maybe in the exam. So you have array, and as it gives the new array, so we should have a new variable to store that array, and we'll say array dot slice. Then it takes the index, the start index from where to start. It takes the end index where I should stop my slice. And the only difference between slice and splice is splice take the length here, how many elements to remove, but slice take the index, and the last index will not be included in that slice. So let's see what it means if I hit enter and I press see my variable or the slice that is coming out of this array. So I said start at index 1. So index 1 is this, and go till index 3. So index 2, index 3. And we said it not include the last index value. So it ignore this and it slice these two values in the array format. And as I said, it's not mutating the data. So if I press ARR again, the actual data is remain the same. It's just slicing it and assigning it to a new array. So this is all about slice. Then there is another method called concat method. So concat returns new array by combining value of an array that is specified as parameter with existing array values. So let's see, suppose I have two array, one is X, one is Y, and I want to add these elements to my X array, or I want to concat that. To achieve this, you need to say on X array, run the concat operation and pass the other array that you want to concat on X. So I want Y value to be concatenate with the X array. And if I hit enter, you can see you have the updated concatenated array. So if I press X, so it concat operation also returns a new copy always. So if I press Y, all data is remain same, but it's generating a new copy here that you need to store in a new variable. So this was all about array methods, the basic array methods. Now we'll go to the advanced array methods, and we sometimes called it higher order functions as well. And most commonly used in Lightning Web Components and heavily used in the functional programming. And there will be like 2-3 questions based on these methods as well in the exam. So we'll start with the first, the map method. So map method loop over the array and returns a new array. So map also returns always the new array, and it returns the array based on the return value you want to return. Then we have a every method that also run over the each element of an array, and based on the condition, if it satisfies all the elements, then it returns true, otherwise it returns false. Then we have a filter method, and most commonly used method for filtering. Based on the condition, if the condition satisfy, it return that element from an array. So it's basically for filtering the data in an array. Then we have a sum method. Sum is opposite of every. Every checks all the elements should satisfy the condition. Sum method says if any of the elements satisfy the condition, return true. Then we have a sorting of array. Then we have a reduce and reduce right. I'll come back to reduce and reduce right later. First, we'll see the demo till the 5th point, map, every, filter, sum, and sort. And you need to remember this syntax, because in the exam, there will be a syntax for any of these methods, and all the syntax almost same. And as it's a complex method, I would say, so I created a complex structure this time. So till now we were working with a basic array. Now I created an array X that is consist of 4 objects. So we called it as array of objects. So each object has a name property and an age property and different value. So I said, I want to run a map operation over it and want to convert this name to a key and age to a value. So this is the most common operation whenever you have a different array of objects and you want to create a pick list or a combo box, and you want the data in the specific format like key and value or label and value, any format. So map operation is very handy over there. So the syntax here is map operation run on array. So we said X is the array, run the map operation. The first value is the callback. When we pass function as an argument to another function, that is called callback. So this is already a function because this is a bracket. Now we need to create another function. So to create another function, I'll just create a function. This is my another function. This is a callback function. You need to remember from the exam point of view, specifically the argument's name. So first especially a parameter's name. So the first parameter will be current item. So when it runs the loop, the first item is the current item. Then second is the index of this element. And the third is the actual array. So actual array is always X. So it just take the copy of array in the actual array, index starts with 0. When this element comes, index will be 0. When this element comes, index will be 1. When this element comes, it 2, likewise, it goes on. And the current item is, it takes the first element as the first current element, then the second element is the second current element. Now, this was a syntax, and I want to return something because map method always returns something. And to return this, I'll write some object. I want create an array of object and create a new array of object with each element as an object with the property key, and map the current item dot name to a key, and I want a value property as well in my new array, in which I want you to map current item dot age. So from X, current item will come with the name A, age 10. It will map to a value property as well as to key property, and it return this object, and this object gets added into an array. Maps always returns an array. So now if I hit enter, you can see that it generates an array of objects that has key value properties. And if I print my X back, it remains the same with the name and age. So we transform, whenever you want to transform an array, always prefer a map operation on an array. Just remember the syntax because rest of the all operation works on the syntax. So first parameter is the current item, second is the index, third is the actual array. For better understanding, let's print this as well. Say current item print. You print the index. Index starts with 0 in all array. Say let's print the actual array as well. And now if I hit enter, so it takes the first object from an array. So that is the current item for that iteration. Then it has the index 0 and then full actual array, that is actual X. So it's not necessary to define always these parameters, but if you are using them only, otherwise you can go with directly the current iteration. So this is the map operation. Let's move on to the every. So we said every method returns true or false if every element in the array satisfies the condition. So we already have the X array. Now let's go and run the every operation. Syntax will be same, and I'll try to write the syntax again and again fully. So it will be the same current item, index, array, and you can give any name, but I am giving something meaningful so that it's easy to remember. And based on some condition, it checks whether it's satisfy all the condition or not. So I'm saying check every element in an array whether age is greater than 8 or not. So I said current item dot age is greater than 8 or not. So if I say open my X array, that is the actual array on which we are doing the every operation. So age is greater than 8 for all of the objects. So it returns true. But similarly, if I say whether the current age is greater than 10 or not, it satisfies few conditions like 40 and 20 is yes, but 9 and 10 is not. So if any of the condition is failed, it returns false. So this is what every function do. So let's go to the next one, that is filter. And in filter operation, it returns the new array with all the elements that satisfy the condition. The syntax will be remain same and our arrays remain same. So we put the filter operation on the same array with the same syntax, that is callback. Create the callback function, and then we'll say current item index actual array, and I'll write my condition based on which it filter the data, and I'll say filter all the items that has the age greater than equal to 20. So it returns that array based on the condition. So it filter out all the objects that has age greater than 20. So when first iteration come, it sees 10, it ignore it. It saw 20, it saw 40, it accept it, it hold in the array. Then it comes to 20, it's okay, it satisfy the condition, it push to the array, and at the end it comes 9 and it ignore it. So this is how you do the filtering in an array. Let's go to the another one, that is sum. Sum, as I said, it's just opposite of every operation. So in every, we were checking whether the current item age is greater than 10. But if I say sum, just replace the keyword every with the sum, rest the syntax will be remain same. If it sees if any of the element satisfy this condition, it returns true. So sum is like at least one condition should be satisfied in those element of an array. So this is all about sum. Now let's move on to the another one, that is sorting. And sorting is a bit different. And for sorting, we have a sort method. First check whether our array is available. Yes, we are using the same array. We'll say sort method. Also take the callback, but its signature is different this time. It takes the callback and it takes two parameter A and B. It's more for from the sorting point of view, like first element and second element. And it returns, it says, suppose we want to sort our age in the ascending order. If it is ascending, then always A comes first, and we'll say A dot age minus B dot age. So if I hit enter, it sorts my data in the ascending order 9, 10, 20, and 40. Similarly, if you want the same operation for the descending, then just change the order from B minus A. And it changed the sorting order to descending. Now 40 is coming, 20 is coming, 10 and 9. So sorting method works fine till the time it's a number. But what happen when we put the sort in the alphabets? So to do that, there is another approach almost similar. First, we'll go and see our array is there. Again, we'll put the sort, but this time we are doing a sorting on a name, that is a string. It takes the same signature and it returns the condition that in mathematics like comparators. So we'll say A dot name greater than B dot name, then say yes, it's greater. Otherwise, this is a ternary operator that we already saw in the previous session when we talked about operator. This is a ternary operator. So if this condition satisfies, it returns 1. Otherwise, it will go to the other side of this column and it checks the another condition. So I'll put brackets here. And then it say if it's not satisfied, then check A dot name is less than B dot name. And again, we'll say if this condition true, then say yes, minus 1. Otherwise, it's 0. So now if I hit enter, and it sorts the name in ascending order A, B, C, D. Like earlier it was B, C, A, D, some random order. Similarly, if you want it to do in ascending order, you just need to change the operators from greater than to less and less than to greater and just hit enter. You can see D, C, B, A. So this is the sorting of string. Now let's go back to the slide and we'll see the another two methods, the last two methods, I would say, the reduce and reduce write. And this was in my exam. So this is also most of the syntax only that was in my exam. So this method reduces the array to a single value and it runs the loop from left to right. And when we say explicitly reduce write, so this method reduces the array to a single value from right to left. Okay, so let's go to our playground and we'll create a number array of numbers because we are trying to reduce, and I feel the basic operation to reduce a number is sum operation. So we'll do a summation of these number and we'll say we'll take a variable to hold that result, that is sum. And reduce also returns the new value always. Oh, it returns something at the end. So we are running the reduce method on the numbers array. So the syntax will be remain same. We call the method. It takes first function, first parameter as a callback. The callback, and we'll go with the same syntax first. Current item, then index, then array. But this time there is a catch with respect to map filter, another method. Its first parameter is, you can give any name, but I am giving total. So this parameter is the initial value or the previously returned value by the function. And to initialize this parameter, you can pass after a callback a initial value. So initial value, I want my total parameter to initialize with 0, and then we'll return our write our operation, and we are saying total plus current item. When the loop started, reduced loop started, it takes total as 0 for the first time. It takes the current item as 10. Index will be 0 and actual array will be the remain same. And when it comes here, it says 0 plus current item, it is 10, and then it become total become 10. Now, as I said, this total takes the initial value or the previously returned value. So now it returns a 10 value. Now the next time total become 10 and the current item become 30, then 10 plus 30, likewise it hold the previous value in a loop. So for the better understanding, I can put the console for you guys, and similarly I can print the current item. Now if I hit enter, so the total start with 0, that time current item was 10. Next time when the loop comes, total hold the previous return value of the function and it become 10, and current item is a 30. Likewise, it sum the all elements of an array, and if I print sum, it gives me the total sum 90. So this was in the exam. So you need to remember, after callback, you need to pass the initial value, and initial value will always hold by the first parameter. Similarly, reduce write, just syntax will remain same. The order of execution will be different. Now, if I change the reduce method to reduce write method, the signature and everything is same. Now, if I hit enter, it start with right to left. So it picked 0 initial value, that is correct, but the current item this time is not 10. It picked the last value that was in our number. So if I print my numbers array, you can see it picks the last element. Then it picks the second last and the first one. Likewise, it runs from right to left. So you may get reduce, write, or reduce. Just make sure you remember the syntax and need to understand what this parameter is doing. It's holding the initial value or the previously returned value. So this was all about the array methods. So now the next topic is spread and the rest operator. So the spread operator allows us to spread the value of an array into a single argument or element. And here I mentioned any iterable. So any iterable means any object as well. It holds good here. So you can spread any array or any object. So spread operator is very helpful in different scenario based on the usage, like how you are using it. You can create the new copy of array or object using spread, and make sure it's always creating a shallow copy, not the nested copy. Then you can use spread operator to concatenation of values or properties. Then you can pass element of an array to a function as a separate arguments. And you can also convert string to an array using spread operator. So let's go and see the spread operator first. So I'm back to my console. Suppose I have an array X that has number, and I want to create a new copy. So spread operator notation is, syntax is, you have to pass triple dots, and triple dot is the syntax for spread operator, and triple dots only work on iterables, that is array or object on which you can run the loop. And then you will pass X, and if you hit enter, and if I print Y, you can see it generates a new copy. And to prove that, now if I say X dot push operation, I'll say 10. Now X length becomes 6 with the new data, but it's not updating anything in the Y because it generates a new copy of X. And that was the problem with the push operation. So if I show you the problem with the push operation and why I never use push operation. So suppose I have an array, and now I'll say Y equal to X without creating a shallow copy or a new copy. And now if I say print Y, it exactly same value. Now if I say X dot push 10, now if I print 10, you can see Y has the value 10. Now if I print X, I didn't touch anything in the X, but its value got added at the end, because array or objects work as a reference. And while copying one array or an object, you need to break that reference. Either you can go with the shallow copy. If it's a nested structure, you need to go with a deep copy. So that's why we never use push, pop, and splice in the new JavaScript when they introduce this spread operator. So just now we saw how to create a new copy. Now we'll go and see the concatenation using spread. So now I have again the same array X, and I want to add some property to it. I can say spread my X and add the value 6, 7, any number of value you want to add. Oh, I missed one dot, that it should always be a triple dot. Now if I hit Y, you can see it has two new properties that we have pushed to the array, and our X will be remain same, so it's not mutating the data. Then let's go to the third operation that we can do with the concatenation, that is pass elements of an array to a function as a separate argument. I'll show you in a minute what it means. I have a function. Function is very common, so function name is add. It's expecting some parameters, and it's adding those values, whatever he is receiving. And I have an array that is arguments array. I have many values in that array. Now, if I want to run this add operation on this array, if I pass directly args to this add function, yes, to this function, it will consider the whole array as a single, it maps the whole array to a property. So A become the whole array and rest become undefined and undefined. So here to rescue, if I spread the array, so it will spread and it assign the A, it assign the value 1 to A, 2 to B, 3 to C, and if there are no further parameters available to accept those arguments, it ignores that. So if I hit enter, now you can see its summation is 6. That means 1 plus 2 plus 3, its mapping is correct. So this is another way we can use spread operator. Then we have seen the fourth approach, the convert string to an array. Suppose I have a string called Nikhil. It's in the double quote, so it means a string. Now, if I want to convert into a array of characters, I'll just spread this string with a triple dot and put the array bracket. And if I hit enter, it just spread that characters into an array. So there is the fourth way. Now let's go to the fifth way. Till now, we just talk more of array point of view. Let's try to spread an object as well. So we call it the fifth approach, that is spreading of objects. And if I have an object that has a property name and age with the value Nikhil and 2, now my X is available. Now if I want to add something to this object, I can use the spread operator, and the spread operator, as you know, it always creates a new copy. So as we are running the operation on the object, so it should be object brackets. I'll say spread my existing object, that is X, and add a new property location, that is Melbourne. So what will happen is it spread this, make the new copy of this, and concatenate or add this new property to this object and generate a new object. So if I print Z, because of spreading of X, we got name and age, and the other property that we have added explicitly, that's also got added. So this is how you spread of object. Now let's go back to our slide. There we have a REST operator. So REST operators allow us to collect all the remaining element in an array. With REST operator, we can gather any number of arguments in an array, and REST parameters have to be at the last arguments. So let's go what it means. And sometimes people get confused between the spread operator and REST operator because its syntax is almost same with the triple dot. So whenever you have a function and you are running a triple dot in a function, that means it's a REST operator, not a spread operator. Anywhere else, we called it as a spread operator. So when you use the triple dot as an argument in a function, then it should be a REST operator. So as we said, it just convert the arguments to an array. And if I print arguments, we create a function adds, it receives the arguments and it converts the arguments into an array. And this is very useful approach when you don't know how many arguments gonna come into your function. It's better to convert them into an array, and based on that you can run the loop. Now if I pass add 1, it converts the argument, single argument, to an array. If I pass 2, it converts that also into 2. If I pass multiple argument, so it will convert those arguments also in an array. So this is a REST operator. And another use case of REST operator is if you want some parameter explicitly, I'll show you what I mean. So I create a function xyz. I want x value to be mapped explicitly, y value to be mapped explicitly, and remaining value that comes, just do a rest operation and convert them into an array. So here in the slide, as we discussed, like rest operator should always be the last argument in a function. It should not be the first. And now I have a big values to this function. So I'm passing hello, hey, hello, what's up, good morning, hi, howdy. So hey will map to x, that works fine. Hello will map to y, that works fine. And then it sees z is rest, putting a rest operator. It takes rest all values and convert into an array. And now you can see the first console print hey, hello, and the second console is logging the array of the remaining. That's why rest means the rest of the arguments that are receiving, just convert them into an array. So this is all about rest and spread operator. Let's move on to the next one. Looping in JavaScript. So for loop is common in all the programming language. For each, some programming language use this loop as well. Then we have two new loops in JavaScript, that is for off, for in, that was introduced in, I guess, in 2016. Then we have the traditional loops, while loop and do while loop. Let's quickly have a look at very high level. I'll explain you when to use which loop. That's the key point here. So first is the for loop. So I have an array alphabets, array of an objects, and then I'll write a for loop. That is a very basic one. We'll first do the initialization, then we'll do put the condition, and then they say alphabets dot length, and the last part is iteration. We run this, and in this I'll just print the alphabet names individually, and to do that we just take the actual array, use the index value that is coming in the I, and with the help of dot notation we'll fetch the name. So if I hit, well and good, for loop works fine. But there is performance issue sometimes, like we are creating a new variable every time we are creating a for loop. We are doing one operation, array operation, that is finding a length. So it's always be a costliest thing. Then we introduce a for loop to solve this issue, and for each loop actually. So the for each loop is similar to the map loop in terms of syntax. So I want to apply a for each. This is heavily used in the functional programming. It also takes the same signature, that is current item, index, and the actual array. And now if I want to print the same thing, I just need to take current item dot name. I don't need to use that array notation, I value and all. And if I do this, it runs in the same way. But there was a catch. Then once JavaScript launched the for each, why they didn't deprecate the for loop? With for each loop, you can't break the loop in between. So suppose there is a scenario in which I want to break the for loop after the condition met. It means like if you are searching something in a heavy data, and once you found you don't want to continue searching, that is a help in your performance issue. So with for each you can't do that, but here in for loop you can break that. So to break the loop, you already know we have a break statement. I'll say alphabets dot name, and whenever you found that a in the loop, whenever the name become a, just break the loop. If I hit enter, you can see it only print for the first time. After that it break the loop, it came up. So that's why we didn't deprecate for loop, and it's still there. Then we saw, okay, that for each is bit clear and concise and better syntax. Then ES6 come up with a more easier way, And they said, why not to use a for off loop that is very small and very clear syntax. So what it says, use the for keyword, take the current item. I'll say the current item as alphabet of the loop on which you want to apply. So it's the array. So our array is alphabets. So from alphabets, I'll take the current item. You can see current item as well. So anything is fine. And if we run the same operation, we'll print the alphabet is inside the for of, and do the same thing. And the best part of this, with this loop, you can break as well. So if I want to break for off loop, then you can put alphabet dot name whenever becomes a, just break it and it break it. So this is one of the most popular way nowadays for looping an array, and the clear way I would say. We talk more about array, but earlier we don't have any approach to loop directly on an object. So we were converting first array into an we were converting object into an array using object.keys. But this time they introduced for in loop that help you to run iterate over the properties of an object. So for in loop is basically for the object. So let's create an object. I'll create an object old car that has make, model, year property. And if I want to run a loop, its syntax is almost similar to an for off loop. So it also take the key. Key is nothing, is the property name. We call in object property name as the key and the value. And so it takes the key and it takes the actual object on which you want to apply your loop. And then you can print that. You can print the key. Key will give you the make, model, year, and value will become from an object. If you pass as a key, this is a array notation to fetch the value from an object. It will run fine. So if I print, it prints make, Toyota, model, titles. So now with the for in loop, you can run the loop on the object as well. And for while loop and do while loop, I guess we are not able to cover. So I'll skip this, but I'll tell you at high level when to use for and when to use while. So for loop used only when we already knew the number of iteration, and the while loop used when the number of iteration are not exactly known. And you should use do while only when you want to run something before your condition runs. So something like number guessing game, you ask a person, guess the number between 1 to 10, enter a number between 1 to 10. And if he enters the same number, if you want based on the condition, you can rerun the loop or you can exit the loop. So let's move on to the next topic, that is this keyword in the JavaScript. And this keyword is very confusing for few people. And this keyword refer to the object it belongs to. So this is a keyword in a JavaScript. That value depends how you are using it, in which context you are using that this. So in method, so method is nothing, it's a function inside a object, we called it as a method. So when you call this inside a method, this refer to a owner object. When you call this alone somewhere randomly, then this refer to a global object. In a function, this refer to a global object as well. In a function in a strict mode, this is undefined. Strict mode is a directive. If you use a use strict directive, I'm not covering in this session, but for a high level, there is a directive that enforce JavaScript to run in a specific rules. And then when we have an event, and this refer to an element that receive the element, that receive the event, it means suppose you have a button, on click of button, this means the actual button who received that event. And then we have a method like call and apply, can refer to any object. So if you want to change this scope of any object, we have two methods called call and apply. We'll see this in an example now. I'll go back to my playground. And I guess error function is next one. Yeah. Just give me a second, guys. Okay, let's go and see that this. So first, this operation is in the slide. In a method, this refer to the owner of the method. Okay, so to create a method, we create an object person. I'll create properties, first name, and these are the properties, and the method is the function. So I'll say get full name, and we call this full name as a method, and we'll assign a function to it, and we'll return the concatenation of first name and the last name. So we are using this inside this method. So what this represent here? For better understanding, I'll console this for you. As we saw in the slides, in a method, this refer to the owner of the method. Who is the owner of this method is an object. So person is the this under this context. So many this don't get confused. So when we call this in a method, this represent the owner. It means this object. This object will be the this. So if I hit enter and call person dot get full name, you see I printed this here. It returns me the same object back that has the property first name, last name, and get full name as a method. And I print it. So this dot first name is nothing. It's the person dot first name, person dot last name. So this in a method refers to the owner of the method. So these kind of questions you may get in the exam, in which they will ask you the value of this at a particular level. Okay. Now we know in the client side, our application run in the browser, and the global object in the browser, we called it window. So if I type window here, so you'll get an object. This is the global object where everything gets attached. When you run something, it attached here, all values, dot length, and whatever the global variable that we have declared till now, that is where new array, number, whatever we discuss, it's all attached to the window object. Okay, so what the second statement says, this alone, this keyword alone is global. So it means if I type this here, it points to the window object, and to prove that window and this is true. So this is always global by default until unless you are using inside an method. Okay, let's go to the third point that we said. The third point says this in a function represent the object that own the function. Okay, so if I create a function, my function, and I print this, if this function is in global scope, it means it's not wrapped with any other function. So this represent the global scope, that is window. So if I call this function, it again print the window object. That is another concept you need to remember. This inside a function is always a global unless it's wrapped by an object or a function. Okay. Now the third point is the fourth point, I would say, and that is in an event, this refer to the element that received the event. And to understand that, I'll go to JS Fiddle. It's an editor, online editor, because I want to write some HTML as well. So I'll create a button quickly just to show you what this over here, and I'll attach an event on click. I'll say a method name ABC and pass this value. I'll say click me. So I have a button. Now if I print this value in a function, and I'll write a function here, I'll say run. So now you can see here, I have a button called click me this side. And now if I click this button, it passed the this to me and I'm printing the this in my console, okay? And now as soon as I click this, and it prints me the button itself, wherever I click the event. So as the statement says, in an event, this refer to the element that received the event. So in our case, button element received the event and it print that event. Then we have another, this, that is explicit function binding. And now I'll go back to the same example, and you definitely will get some question around this approach, where you are changing the this from one object to another. So this is our default person object, in which this refer to a person that we already have seen. Now I have another object called person1. Okay, and this method doesn't have this get full name method, but I want this get full name should receive the context of person1, not the person. So to break the context from one object to another, or I would say to set the context from one object to another, there is a method called call. So to do that, I'll say person.get full name. This we are calling a get full name method on a person, and we'll say dot call. And what call gonna do here is it takes the first parameter as the context which you want to set. So I'll just pass my person1 here, and I'll say whenever the get full name gets called, just change the context whenever the call method is there, and it's a self calling. So it's called immediately as soon as I enter, and you are passing the context. So now instead of printing Nikhil Karkara, because this point to earlier to the person object, this time it prints Salesforce dev. So if I hit enter, now you can see this is printing person1 object here, and it's changing the this scope here to a person1. There is another benefit of call, and that I'll show you. Call not only change the context, you can pass the parameter as well with the call. So to show that, I create the get full name, and in that I am expecting now two parameters to come here. So two parameters also I'm appending here, and I already have a person object, and now I have a person1 object. And now if I want to change the context as well as want to pass the argument as a individual argument, I would say, then you call, and then you pass those argument after that context, and it will run totally fine. There is a same method called apply, like most people get confused. Apply also set the context, but it pass the arguments in form of array. So if you have arguments in the form of array, then always use apply method. Otherwise, use the call method. If I run this, it also works because automatically A will map to A here and B will map to B here. If I run here, you can see it again print the same thing. Apply and call are interchangeably used based on the arguments type you want to pass. And this is all about our this keyword. So we covered all the approaches, how this behave in different context. Let's move on to the next topic, that is arrow function, and most commonly used nowadays. So we'll see different approaches of arrow function first, and then I'll show you why arrow function came into picture, and then we'll see when not to use arrow function. Okay. So first we'll go and see what is arrow function. I'll clean this up. And for arrow function, okay, so first I'll create a normal function that everybody knows now. This is the function. I'll try to relate with the normal function with the arrow function, okay? And this function returns 42. So this is a basic function with the function name and return a value 42. And this function doesn't carry any arguments here. So what I'll do is I'll try to convert this into an arrow function. So the first approach is arrow with no parameters, okay? So here it's arrow with no parameters. And if I want to convert this function into arrow function, so arrow function, I'll say simply, I can say this 42, and I'll store this into a variable called ABC. And you know, in JavaScript, a function can be an expression. It means you can assign a function to a variable. Okay, so now this is the conversion of this function in arrow form. So we'll first drop the function keyword. We'll change the function name and store it, convert into variable if you want. You can ignore this as well, any name you can give. And you can, if there is no parameter, you can not necessarily required to use the curly bracket. You can give any notation, you can give underscore as well, but that makes more sense, the curly bracket. That's why I prefer curly bracket here. And if there is no executing statement before returns, I mean, you are not performing anything before return, then you can directly put the arrow and write your statement. So I'm returning directly 42. So when you put something immediately after the arrow notation, it means it's a return statement by default. Okay, so now let's go to a arrow with a single parameter. Okay, and to see the single parameter here, the single parameter is you are passing something and you are returning something. And to do that, I'll convert this same one. It's expecting a parameter and it's returning the parameter. So here, just remember, in the exam, you may get confused when to give bracket, when not to give. If you have one parameter, it's not necessary to give this bracket. Okay. And if there is no parameter as well, then also it's not necessary to give the bracket, and you can return as it is. And this will also work perfectly fine. If I pass 2, it returns the 2. That is also fine. Now let's go to the multiple parameters. There the things get changed. So now again, I'll create a function ABC. I'll say it expecting X and Y, and returning X and Y. So if I want to convert this into an array function, I'll say here ABC. Ideally, you should use const, but it will clash in my console. That's why I'm using var here. And now there are 2 parameters. Then you need this curly bracket here as a compulsory, you can think. And now it will pass 2 parameter. And here we are just returning directly. So you can directly say X plus Y without using a return statement. As I said, anything immediately after an arrow function is a return statement until unless you put the curly bracket. So ABC 2,3, and it give me the sum 5. Now let's go to the block body using arrow function. So till now we played with the no parameter, single parameter, and multi-parameter. Now with the block body. Now within the function, you are trying to perform something. So I'll say ABC. You are passing some values X, Y, and you have some variable, local variable Z here, 10. And now you're trying to return something like X plus Y plus. And now if I want to convert this, here I have something before the return statement. So to convert this, I'll go with the same approach where ABC, I'll replace the function keyword with the curly bracket, and it's expecting 2 parameters. I'll give that 2 parameters. Now here I can't do this directly because there are some statements that is running before the return. To achieve that, now I'll put the curly bracket. And when you put the curly bracket, it is necessary to give the return statement. Just note it down. In the exam, you get 3 or 4 different code snippets, and in which they ask you which is the valid statement here. So I'll say here LZ equal to 10, and then you'll say return X plus Y plus. So it's almost similar. And if we say X, Y, Z, 1, 2, and it returns 13, 10 plus 2 plus 1, 13. So this is a block body when we have block body in the arrow function. The other confusing thing that comes in exam is arrow with object literals. Now I have an object called name, and here I'll create first function for better understanding. So it's return. Now to convert this statement in your arrow function, just make sure you should use a curve bracket that I'll show you quickly. So where ABC, and here we don't have any arguments, I can return. So most people do the mistake, they just say, okay, this is return an object, I'll just pass it as a return, but it will not work out. The reason is arrow function sees, okay, I have a flavor bracket, it means there will be a return statement inside it. So, but we are returning an object, then to do that, you need to wrap this, and this also considered as a return in arrow function. So note it down, when immediately after an arrow function you put this curve bracket, it means also it returns. So if I say ABC, it returns me an object. Till now we discussed all about the syntax of arrow function and different syntax of arrow function. Now let's go, what was the problem that brings the arrow function, okay, with the JavaScript. So earlier, suppose I have an object, and object has some ID 42, and then I have counter method, that method has a function declaration, that is another method, that is ABC, and that is very common pattern in many of the program, you would have seen that. Now I'm printing console log this here, and I want to access this dot ID, and I'll call this function immediately after that. Clean it a little bit for better understanding quickly, just give me a second. Okay, so we created an object where that object has a property ID, then it has a method counter, and within that method I am executing another function that is a function declaration, not a method. And when in that function declaration, if I want to access the this value, this property, it is not available. And to prove that, I'll just put this as well here for the console, what it's pointing to. Now hit enter, we'll call obj.counter method. And now see, we said this points to the parent object if it is inside the method. It is inside the method, but further it is inside the function, and function declaration always point to a global object, and we are not able to access the ID. So when there are nested function, we were losing the scope. And to fix this, many people have used this approach. What they do is they'll create a variable that and assign this. This was the dirty trick in JavaScript, and they were using this that dot this. Now it's passing the scope in the form of that. Now you can see it's printing 42. So this was the dirty hack. It was not recommended one, but people were using it. To solve this earlier in an elegant way, so we were converting, there is a function called a bind method. So bind method generates a new function, and that is heavily used if you work with a React.js and Vue.js. So we'll say we are printing this again. I'll go back to the normal state. So this was our normal state other. Now I want to pass this to this function. So I want to bind this to this function ABC. We can say dot bind, say bind this to this. It bind method always generates a new function internally. So I can hold this method to Z and I can call method. So this was the approach given by JavaScript earlier. And if I say object.counter, you can see it's working. There is another shorthand notation you can use if you don't want to create a new variable and all this. You can call immediately after this. This will also work in bind. So this is how we were binding earlier. To solve this tedious process, we bring the arrow function. So if I convert this method to an arrow function, I'll say ABC equal to, and I'll remove this bind and all this that. And now if we run, this will point to the exact object that is a parent function, and we are seeing the 42. So to solve this tedious process, we bring in the arrow function, and that I said I'll tell you never to use arrow function with some properties. So never use arrow function in objects method. So never create this type of objects. So in which you have a method and you are creating an what we call arrow function or arrow method. And if I try to access this, you get to know this is pointing to the global window, not to the object. So never ever use, you can see this window. So never ever use your arrow function as a method in an object. Let's move on to our next topic. And next is the real killer, object prototype and prototype chain. And I'll give my best to explain you because it's one of the complicated scenario in JavaScript, and bigger libraries like Lodash and jQuery all build on this foundation. And with this, I'll prove it like how function and array actually is an object in JavaScript. Okay, so there is a term called prototype. The prototype is an object that is associated with every function and object by default in JavaScript. So let's go and see what is prototype here. So as I said, prototype is an object that is associated with every function and object by default in JavaScript. Okay, so I'll create an object quickly, and once the objects get created, I print that object. Till now, we were just seeing this object, but behind the scene, what JavaScript does, it create a prototype property. So you would have seen this Gradiche __ proto. And if I open this, and it has bunch of values like toString operation, locally string, has own property and all. So by default, JavaScript attaches prototype to a function or an object. And similarly, if I say array, now we'll say how array is a object. Now I create an object, create an array. Now if I click this, I print this array, you'll see array, and then it also has a prototype that is __ proto. And __ proto is a property of an instance created by a constructor. So this is the property at the runtime created by the constructor. So if I open this, you can see it's created by a constructor called array, capital A here. And they mentioned the I created by an array constructor. And I'll further go down in this chain, and I'll see there is another proto. And this array constructor got formed from an object constructor. So here we can see the array is an object, and we can print this proto as well, and they append __ because by mistake you should not update this. It causes sometimes big performance issue as well as brings the bug to the code. So if I say first proto, so it's give me an array constructor. If I say give me the second proto, it gives me an object constructor, that is object. And if I go further down in the chain, so last point in the chain is null. If it doesn't find anything, it say it's null. I'm done with the proto chain, and it prints the null. So A was created with array constructor, then object constructor, and at the end it's null. So it said further there is no chain. Similarly, if I have to check how function is working here, I have created a function here, entity. This is a function constructor here. So we called a function as a function constructor whenever we keep the function name with a capital letter. And in terms of oops, we called it as a class. But earlier in JavaScript, there was no class concept. So we were calling function constructor as a class. Okay. So this is internally it's a class. Now if I print this console.directory, there is another method to see the directory. I'll say print the directory of entity. And now if I open that, you will see it also has a proto that has a constructor, a function constructor. And I go further down, it has another proto that is also formed using object constructor. So these all are formed at behind the scene from the objects. And this is called prototype. So prototype is an object that is associated with every function or object by default in JavaScript, unless you create a null object. To show that how you can avoid creating a constructor or avoid creating a prototype explicitly. So if I create an object with the object.create method and I'll say null, I don't want any reference, I don't want any prototype. So if I print O, and it says no properties available, and this is not the right way to do that, because we always, it's better to create with a proper prototype. I'll show you in a while what's the benefit of prototype in actual performance of JavaScript and why JavaScript relies so much on prototypes. So till now we have seen just the basic level. Each and every method or function or object has their own prototype. And now let's go what the problem the prototype is solving here. Okay. So suppose I have an object user1. Okay. I'm creating a user1. Now I want to create a user2. I'll again need to write the same signature user2 with the method and the property. Till 2, 3, it's fine. But if you want to create the users for 100 or 1000 times, this will not gonna solve your purpose. To tackle this problem, what we're gonna do is in oops, we create a class that act as a blueprint. In earlier JavaScript, when class was not there, we were creating the functional constructor. So you can create the functional constructor in this form, as well as if you are confused with this structure, you can create in this form as well. A function with the uppercase letter as the name. So person is the function name. And if it starts with the capital P, we called it as a constructor function. Okay. So I'll go with the same one. This is easier notation. So I am creating a constructor function that is receiving a first name, last name, role, and age. And I'm assigning a property first name, last name, age, role, and a method called get full name. Okay. So we created a blueprint that is called constructor function. Now I start creating a user. So to create a user, I'll create a variable user1 equal to, now it's a constructor, so it will be a new keyword we can perform on it. And it's expecting Nikhil means first name, last name, then age and the role. Now this is the easiest way to create the different types of persons. So I create another object with says user1, and we call this as an instance or object as well. So we create the user1. Similarly, you can create user2, and likewise you can create number of user you want with the same signature or same prototype. Okay, so here prototype means the same signature, a blueprint. Okay, so I'll change it to 25, Mitchell 1, change some things here. Okay, and if I say user1 dot get full name, it gives me nikhil.karkara. If I say user2 dot get full name nikhil1 karkara1, things were working fine. But let's open the user1 here and see. Now if you see the user that we have created, it has properties that are fine, but it has a method, and if we create 100 and 200 user, this method is same and redundant. So we are appending this method every time to each object, and that cause a lot of performance issue. So to solve that performance issue, we need a place where we can attach this method, and it is easily available to all the instance that gets created. And to help that problem, JavaScript comes with the prototype. So to do that, what they said, each constructor function has a prototype property, as I already said, right? So let's go and let me create a object. I remove the method from this object, sorry, from this constructor function. I create a constructor function and I remove the method from this constructor function, that was get full name. I hit enter, and then JavaScript said, from the best practice point of view, you should attach all your method that are common to a prototype property. So by default, we said when the function construction get created, by default JavaScript create a prototype. Okay, so don't get confused with the prototype and underscore underscore prototype. So I'll tell you what the difference between prototype and underscore underscore prototype. Prototype is a property of a function constructor. So we create the function constructor. So to assign the value to the prototype, we'll use this prototype. And to access the property from an object, we use underscore underscore prototype. At the end, they are doing the same thing. One is on the instance, one is on the constructor function. Okay, so don't can confuse here. So now we'll say we'll attach our method to the prototype, and we'll say method name get full name, and I attach it here. Okay, now if I hit enter, now my person has a property and its prototype has the get full name method. Now if I create the instance here called, I'll create a user1, I'll create a user2, and if I see user1 here, in user1 you will see there is no method available. Okay, now in user2 I'll print, you can again see there is no method available. But when I try to access the full name, it is printing correctly. So what's happening behind the scene is, when you call this method user1.getFullName, it comes to this instance. It says, okay, let me check whether the get full name is available in my object. It say no. Okay, let's go to the prototype. So as soon as it's open his prototype, it say, yeah, it's available, and it's execute that. Similarly with the user2, and it brings a good performance from JavaScript engine side. So that's why we prefer the prototype. So we have seen how to create a prototype and how to assign a method to a prototype. So now let's see a prototype inheritance. Till now we talked about we talk about constructor function, how we can assign, what's the benefit of prototype. Now we'll see how we can create a prototypal inheritance, and this is one of the important topic from the exam as well as from the interview point of view. Usually we get some code snippets, and out of which you need to figure out whether the prototype is correct or not, and which properties available in the which constructor function or a class. So to understand the prototype inheritance, we'll go with the analogy here. Spelling is wrong here. Proto. Okay, so we have prototypal inheritance, and I'll create a constructor function called animal, and animal will receive name and age, and it create the instance using it. But before creating an instance, I want to create a prototype. that is eats. Eats is my method that I want in my prototype. So I'll be creating a function and assigning it to animal prototype. Just remember, this is a prototype of animal, okay? And I'm printing whenever somebody calls this prototype, I'll say this dot name is eating, okay? And now I'll create an instance of animal. I'll say animal1 equal to new of animal, and I'll pass the name and the age. And if I say animal1, it has the property that we discussed just now, and animal1 dot eats, also returning the animal1 is eating correctly. So this is the first constructor we created. Now let's create another constructor called dog. So to create that, I'll create again function, and the dog D should be capital if you are creating a constructor function. And I am saying I want the dog to expect age, name, and breed. So I take the few property that is already available in the animal, and we'll try to access that. We'll see in a minute. So I'll say this dot name. Usually how we do this dot name, dot age, and breed to breed. And if you want, you can attach one method as well. Little bit up. Okay, so I'm attaching one method as well. So this is an independent constructor. There is no linkage between animal constructor and the dog constructor right now. But while creating, I saw there is a constructor available that already has two properties that I want. So I said, why not I inherit those property to my dog constructor? So to inherit the properties of the constructor, we need to use again the call method, and we'll say in animal, this go to this constructor, and we said we can set the context using the call. We'll say set the context to this, that point to this constructor, and it's expecting name and age. So whenever we creating the instance and we are getting the name and age, just pass those names and age to this and create this property. So this is how we are creating, we are doing the object inheritance. And now let me hit enter, and let's create another instance using dog now. So we'll create dog1, and I'm saying the name should be dog1, age is 4, and breed is bulldog. And now if I hit dog1 is, oh sorry, the constructor name is dog. And now if I say dog1, it created the object perfectly fine. It able to receive or inherit the animal properties that was age and name, and it has its own property and the method that is also remain there. But whether this instance has access to the prototype of our animal, that is eats, and if we try to do that, let's try it, and it throws an error. Dog1 eats is not a function. So the call method was allowing us to inherit only the properties, not the prototype properties and method. And to solve that issue, we'll create the same method again. We'll see this, okay? And once your method is created, like your constructor function is created, immediately after that, you have to map immediately. I'm saying immediately because once the instance got created, it will not get automatically the prototype value, okay? So we'll say dog.prototype, because dog is a constructor, so it has the prototype property, equal to object.create, and we'll say create, copy the animal prototype and assign it to the dog prototype. And now if I create an instance called D2, That is another instance we are creating after copying the prototype, and we'll say D2 has the properties. And if I try to access the eats method, now it's available for us, and D1 is eating. And for this to explain, I tried to create one page as well, like a small graphical representation. I hope it may help you guys. So earlier what we did, we create an animal constructor function. It was having the name and age. Its prototype was pointing to the eats that we assigned explicitly. And once we assign the eats will pointing to the object prototype, that is a global prototype object method from where everything is getting created. And if further we go down, there is a null. This was the first flow that we discussed. Then from the animal, I create an instance animal1. That was an object that was pointing to the animal prototype. So whenever we are calling animal1.eats, it was able to access that eat function, and that too also in the chain. But after that, we created a dog function that is our independent constructor function. And its prototype was pointing to the dog prototype. That was an independent prototype. And there was no linking between animal and prototype as such. And it was pointing to the object prototype. But as soon as we create the instance D1, D1 also pointing to the dog prototype. And once we did the object.create animal.prototype, once we copy the animal prototype and assign it to dog prototype, it break the chain from here and it start moving towards animal. So the chain was like dog was pointing to the dog prototype was pointing to the animal prototype, and animal was pointing to the object prototype. So this is how the inheritance is working behind the scene. So if I open this, dog pointing to animal, animal pointing to object. And then that has this eats method, and further go, that's the main object method. So this is a bit complicated, I know. If you play around with it, it gives you a better understanding how prototypes work and how object inheritance work. But nowadays you don't need to do this all hustle, because JavaScript ES6 version introduced the class and class inheritance. So they introduced the class keyword exactly, and it is almost similar to the Java or Apex class. And behind the scene, it's not exactly a class. It's writing the code in the prototype only. It's just a wrapper on top of what we call a prototypes, object prototypes. I'll prove that as well. Okay, so a class is a type of function, and this is our last topic. I guess we're running off late time. So a class is a type of function, but instead of using the keyword function to initiate it, we use the keyword class, and the property are assigned to a constructor method. And I'll create another instance this time, and we'll follow the same analogy that we used there. Okay, so we'll say to create a class, you need a class keyword, and you need to give the class name. That was animal. Earlier it was a constructor function, and to initialize the values or properties, we'll create a constructor here. And we can say dot name equal to name, this dot age equal to age. So we created a class that has a constructor, and if we want a method, we can attach a method called eats. And now our class, constructor, and method all are ready. And now if I hit enter, the class is ready. Now let's create an instance from this class. Okay, we'll say where any one will go with the same demo I'm trying to replicate here in the class format. So I said create the instance from the animal class, and name will be animal1 and the age will be 2. Oh, the constructor is expecting something, sorry. So we'll say name and age. Now we create the instance. And if I hit enter and I'll see this, it again creating an object that has the property name and age. But internally, if you see now, eats is assigned automatically behind the scene to a prototype. So if I open its proto, you can see eats is available here. So for the performance point of view, by default, class behind the scene attaching the eats to a prototype. So if I try to access this, you can able to see animal one is eating. So this is more of how to define a class and how to create the instance from the class. It's very similar to your Apex or Java. Now let's move on to the another one in which we'll see a class inheritance. Okay. So now my class one is ready. Now I'll create another class called dog1. Now my dog1 has the constructor breed, log breed, and he wants to access the properties of the parent class, that is animal. And to do that, we'll say, first we'll say dog extends. This is a keyword for inheriting, and say extend animal. We'll say dog class should extend the animal class. This is the next question is, what is the reason that arrow function returns a reference to a this in the method? This I don't know, like how they have built internally. Maybe they write a generic function behind the scene in JavaScript that is doing the bind method only, just to reduce that the complexity of every time attaching either this to a that or explicitly using a bind method. So they something use a syntax like arrow notation, maybe. I don't know the answer for this, how internally it binds the this for the arrow function. And what is the reason arrow, this is okay. What is the reason the arrow function returns a reference to a window this in the method? Okay, like in arrow function, like this always go to the parent function actually, ideally. Okay, but we are using a method, and method is a property ideally, or a method is a property of an object. So it's not wrapped with the function as it is. So every time a function always point to the upper function, and upper, if there is no function above that, it will point it to the window. So everything in JavaScript browser side, it's point to a window, but if you run from the Node.js point of view, there it's a global, not the window. So window never runs on the server. Window runs only on the client side, that is browser. As we have classes that take care of prototype, is function prototype still important? Yes, there will be like 3 to 4 questions based on the prototype, like how you can add, what is the right way of adding the method, and there are some snippets based on the prototype, what will be the output once we add this prototype after creating the instance. And there will be few questions based on the classes. So exam is covering both the approaches, the traditional approach, that is a prototype inheritance, and the class inheritance. And there will be a total around 6 to 7 question around this prototype and the class. So it's better you prepare it. Yeah.
Yeah, for question 6, you said like, I mean, see, if you are using the function at the object level, it is called a method. And if you are using just the function keyword, then it's pointing to the object. But if you are using the arrow function, it's pointing to the window.
Yes.
So why the behavior is different? The arrow functions will take care of just this function to a different thing, right?
So arrow function take the reference, exactly reference, when it's wrapped with a function, not with a method. So there is a difference between a method. Method is a property to an object, right? And arrow function is totally a different thing. It's not attaching to a property ideally. It's always referring to a parent. And here in this case, when we are attaching an arrow to a method, its parent is nothing. It's not considering the object as a parent. It takes parent always another function.
So arrow at the first level points to the parent.
At first level, it's a parent. So if there is no parent, it points to a window. That is fine. But if I wrap a function, and within that function, if I point the arrow function, it takes the this means the scope of the parent function. That is the function that wrapped the arrow function.
Okay.
So this is something a bit tricky, but if you play around with it, I guess it gives a better clarity. Because there is a concept, if you are very confused with this, you just try to understand there is a concept called hoisting, in which the things start floating to the top. I didn't cover that because it takes a lot of time for me to go in deep and explain that how these function definition are moving to the top before executing and how variable definitions are. But you can note down and you can read about it. It's called hoisting. That also will help you to understand this process.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess I covered most of the questions that mentioned here. If anyone have anything, you can ask.
So hi, Nikhil. I hope you are doing well. So my question is regarding the prototyping. So like when we create a prototype, we use a generic way of declaring function. So can we use like arrow function there as well?
In that, I can try it because I never use that. And the reason maybe why we never use that, because arrow function introduced in the ES6, like a particular version of JavaScript. At the same time, we introduced the class keywords. So once class keywords comes into picture, we stopped using prototype because that gives us a better readability in the code. But I guess you can create that a constructor function.
Okay, but like if we use like that way, like a prototype object, prototype function in a arrow way, then is there, if we use this there, so it will point to the window object or
it should be
the
a
object.
window object. It should be a window, but we'll try it quickly. Animal is already there. We'll say animal 2, and we'll say convert this to arrow function. Okay, now I'll create an instance of, we'll say animal 2, and animal 2 is my constructor.
I think in prototype, in the function prototyping, you used animal when you use the prototype. Oh, yeah.
And we'll create the instance. We'll say animal 2.its. And you can see here it's not taking the name because it's pointing to the window, as I said. Okay, and that's why it's just printing is eating. It's not giving any name, so it's like is eating.
So it's mean like every time we used arrow function as outer function, it will always point, this will always point to window object.
Window, yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because if, as I said, right, everything is window here in global. So if I said a variable RAM is something, anything, okay. Now, if I want to access it, this RAM is automatically attached to the window object. So if I said window.ram, it gives me the same value. So everything, the parent and the global scope is window. Okay, and that's why we said we should not pollute our global scope. So as much as local variable you can create using let and const within the function, it's always be preferable. And we should avoid creating the global variable randomly.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Nikhil, I think we are good with all the questions. So thank you very much for the session. It was very knowledgeable.